In the heart of Silverleaf City, where fortunes were made and lost daily, Michael Torres stood at the pinnacle of success. He was a self-made millionaire, respected by his peers and beloved by his employees. Yet something weighed heavily on his mind. For years, Michael had used his wealth to support countless charitable causes. He donated to homeless shelters, supported youth centers, and even set up a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. However, one evening, as he sat in his lavish penthouse overlooking the city, he couldn't shake an uncomfortable thought. Am I really making a difference? He had given money and resources, but did he truly understand the struggles faced by those living on the streets? Did people really see the homeless, or did they look past them, pretending they didn't exist? Michael wanted answers, and so he devised a plan, an experiment that would give him insight into the lives of those less fortunate. Michael would go undercover as a homeless man for an entire week, relying solely on the generosity of strangers. He wanted to see firsthand how society treated people living on the streets. His goal wasn't just to observe the behavior of others, but to challenge his own perceptions as well. The next morning, Michael began his transformation, gone with the tailored suits and polished shoes. Instead, he dressed in old torn clothes, items he had purchased from a thrift store to look as authentic as possible. He donned a woolen hat pulled low to cover his face and smudged dirt across his hands and cheeks to complete the look. Standing before a mirror in his mansion, Michael could hardly recognize himself. This is it, he thought. For the next 7 days, I'm no longer Michael Torres, the millionaire. I'm just another homeless man. It didn't take long for Michael to feel the sting of his new reality. On the first day of his experiment, Michael positioned himself on the corner of a bustling intersection in Silverleaf's financial district. This was where business people hurried to their offices, coffees in hand, with a little time to spare. Michael held a simple sign that read, "Lost everything, hungry, anything helps." He watched as a river of people flowed past him, some stealing quick glances before looking away, others barely acknowledging his existence. He called out a few times, "Spare change? Please," but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. He sat there for hours, the ache in his stomach growing as his hope for human kindness dwindled. A young couple walked by, laughing and chatting. Michael looked up, hopeful. He reached out, asking for $1, but the man frowned, pulling his girlfriend closer as if Michael were a threat. A businessman brushed past him, talking loudly on his phone about stock market gains. Michael raised his hand to get his attention, but the man turned his back, never breaking stride. As the days went on, Michael realized that to most people he wasn't just ignored, he was invisible. One afternoon, as Michael sat on the steps of a government building, he overheard 2 women walking past him. They spoke in hushed tones, but Michael caught their words. "It's such a shame," one of them said, glancing at Michael. "He's probably an addict or worse." The other woman nodded. "Yeah, they never want help. They just use the money for drugs. Best to keep walking." By the 4th day, Michael's body ached from sleeping outside, his back stiff from the hard benches, and his stomach growled in hunger. He sat in front of a coffee shop, watching people come and go with their cups of warm drinks, hoping someone would spare him a few dollars. It was then that a young woman named Annie Thompson approached. She had soft brown eyes and wore a simple floral dress. Unlike everyone else, she didn't avert her gaze when she saw Michael. Instead, she stopped and knelt beside him. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, her voice filled with genuine concern. Michael was stunned. He hadn't expected anyone to actually talk to him, let alone kneel beside him as if he were her equal. "I've been better," Michael replied, his voice hoarse from days of little use. Annie reached into her bag and pulled out a sandwich wrapped neatly in paper. "I don't have much," she said, handing it to him, "but I hope this helps." Michael accepted the sandwich, his heart swelling with gratitude. It wasn't just the food that moved him. It was the simple act of kindness in a city full of people who had ignored him for days. Annie was the first person to look at him and see him as a human being. "Thank you," Michael whispered, struggling to hold back tears. Annie smiled and sat down beside him, asking about his story. Michael hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but he decided to tell her a partial truth. He said he had lost everything, which in a way was true. For the past week, he had lost the comfort, privilege, and respect that came with his wealth. He explained that he was trying to get back on his feet, but hadn't had much luck. Annie listened intently, nodding as he spoke. "It must be really hard," she said softly. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but please hang in there. Things will get better. I'm sure of it." Her words, simple yet sincere, pierced through Michael's hardened exterior. For the first time in days, he felt hope. A hope not based on money or status, but on the kindness of a stranger who saw him for more than just his outward appearance. As the experiment neared its end, Michael knew he had to reveal his true identity. He tracked down Annie at the small flower shop where she worked. Still dressed in his ragged clothes, he walked in, causing a few customers to glance at him with suspicion. When Annie saw him, her face lit up with recognition. "Hey, how are you?" she asked warmly. Michael smiled, grateful once again for her kindness. "There's something something I need to tell you, he began, his voice steady but serious. Annie looked confused but curious. I'm not really homeless, Michael said, pulling off his woolen hat and running a hand through his hair. My name is Michael Torres. I'm a millionaire, and I've been undercover for the past week trying to see how people treat the homeless. Annie's eyes widened in shock. Wait, what? Michael nodded and explained everything. The experiment, the indifference he faced, and the lesson he had learned about compassion. He spoke of how, out of everyone he had encountered, she was the only one who had treated him with kindness. Here to just say thank you, Michael continued, pulling an envelope from his coat pocket. I want to repay your kindness. Annie looked at the envelope, hesitant. But I didn't do anything special, she said quietly. I just wanted to help. That's exactly why I'm doing this, Michael replied, handing her the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. Annie gasped, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice trembling. You don't have to say anything, Michael said with a smile. Just know that the world needs more people like you. As Michael left the flower shop that day, he felt lighter than he had in years. The experiment had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He realized that while his wealth allowed him to give in a financial sense, true change required empathy, understanding, and human connection. From that day forward, Michael continued his philanthropy, but with a new perspective. He didn't just give money, he gave time, compassion, and understanding. And whenever he saw someone in need, he remembered the lesson he had learned on the streets of Silverleaf, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply to see someone and acknowledge their worth. Because in a world where so many people walk past without looking, the real millionaires are those who give from the heart.